All right, so this is the second OSU Extension Biweekly Fruit and Vegetable Report meeting, and we'll start off with some updates. So is there anybody who has to hop off the call soon that would like to go first? Otherwise, I can start off. So yeah, so I've seen a lot of striped cucumber beetles, squash bugs, some spotted cucumber beetles now. Getting pretty heavy squash vine borer catches in my traps right near the Michigan-Ohio border. But I'm not really seeing a lot of damage on cucurbit plants, so I guess make of that what you will. Besides that, there's been a lot of talk on Phytophthora and downy mildew, when those are really going to hit hard, and I haven't seen any Phytophthora yet, and but I know that those two diseases are on everybody's minds, and this is the time of year for them, so I just wanted to mention that. There was a label update for Rely 280 herbicide, which is glufosinate, aka Liberty, in field crop systems. The EPA released a new supplemental label for it that gives that allows growers to use it for between row weed control in plastic culture systems or as a burn down herbicide prior to transplanting in different fruiting vegetables like cantaloupe, cucumber, summer squash, watermelon, tomatoes, and peppers. So just know that is a new label update, and contact your local BASF technical service representative to get that label. It's not really available anywhere else at the moment. And the supplemental label is good through December 1st, 2025. So an exciting new weed control option for a lot of these specialty crops that don't have a lot of herbicide options. Besides that, I just wanted to show a few photos from a recent field tour I did in Ontario. So you'll be able to see that. And I'll describe what I'm showing as well, because I didn't realize some people might just be listening to this. So this was an agrobotics field tour in southwestern Ontario that I went to last Wednesday, and it was quite a valuable experience. So I just kind of wanted to share some of the tools and machines that I saw. So to start out with, this is a machine from the company NIO called TED. It is an autonomous tool carrier. Let's see. Set up here for cultivation in vineyards with these finger weeders down here. But you can, take these off and put on different tool attachments. They mentioned that they had been testing it for powdery mildew monitoring in vineyards. So quite a versatile machine, completely autonomous as well. So pretty heavy duty finger weeder set up for cultivating along grapevines. This is a robot from Kretschy Innovations with treads to get through the snow and muddy conditions. Right now it's hooked up to a mower. It's an autonomous trailer for just transporting equipment or crates of fruit and vegetables. It can follow other trailers or tractors. Excuse me. I'm having some issues. 1 second. Yeah, I can try and get that worked out and show you the rest of the photos and videos from that tour, because it was quite interesting. But that's all I have for an update right now. So does anybody have any questions, or we can move on to somebody else?
Chris, I'd just like to mention that last year, late winter, very early spring, I was participating in the Ontario Processing Vegetable Group's annual meeting, especially tomato. And at that trade show portion of that same program, they also had autonomous weeders represented and drones. As a matter of fact, part of the program was exclusively dedicated to technology of that sort. And some of it had been featured at the very large expo that happens annually in California. And I was really impressed talking with some of the folks there, the manufacturers of some of these smaller units that are used for weed control. And in terms of, they're being able to work through around the clock, They work slowly, but they can work continuously. And obviously, this is not my area of expertise, but I do think that the autonomous or semi-autonomous crop management aids, we call them that way, whether it's cultivation or spraying or mechanical weed control, are really slowly coming online. So it's something to really watch going forward. And for some who think it's like, oh, that's only for the largest growers and the ones with the deepest pockets. Some of that might be true, but at least based on some of the information I'm seeing, it's not entirely true because some of the companies are being really innovative with their lease programs. And of course, that same unit can be leased by multiple growers. So the work is that the cost is distributed. So it's just an area to keep watching for sure.
Yeah, and I think part of the reason that Ontario seems to be ahead of Michigan and Ohio is because they have lease programs and systems for granting access to this equipment to farmers in place that we don't necessarily have. So I think I'm able to share the rest of the photos here. Let me just get back. Okay, if you're able to see that, I apologize for the interruption. But so this is another robot from NIO called the Oz. It's one of the most popular units because it's smallest, or it's light, and it's relatively cheap compared to the other robots. So it also can be hooked up to various tools and implements. Here it's rigged up for between row cultivation using these sweeps, and it has double tire set up so it doesn't get stuck as easily. So it's probably one of the more popular ones. Autonomous, or not autonomous, but a drone for spraying pesticides. The video of another NIO robot. Is the Dino from NIO, and here it's hooked up for cultivation in organic soybeans. This is the Roboti from AgroIntelli. Again, autonomous tool carrier. You can't see it, but it has planters hooked up on the back there for use in strip till sugar beets in this instance. And this is the laser weeder from Carbon Robotics. So it's not autonomous in the same sense as these other robots that I've just shown, in that this implement needs to be pulled by a tractor. But it has certain AI programs loaded into it, so it can recognize weeds distinct from the crop, and it can target those weeds with a laser beam, so a high intensity thermal laser targeted towards the growing point of the weed, and it kills it when it's still small. So pretty impressive AI. Here's a quick video. Just testing on these wooden tokens with a cross in the center, and it hits it like right dead on in the center of the cross. So pretty impressive, pretty accurate. And again, it moves slow. Like operating speed is 0.1 to 0.2 miles per hour. But it's impressive in how selective it is and how well it works for the most part, considering this is new technology. So yeah, just wanted to share those photos and videos from the recent field tour that I went to. Agrobotics is a very interesting new field, and it might pay to do some programming on it in Ohio in the near future.
Yeah, these are really neat. Yeah, it might be good to do a research study with one of these. Yeah, boy, it's neat.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, thanks for the input, Matt. And so I guess we'll move on to somebody else now. Frank, do you have an update from Wayne County?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit. Scouting this week, we didn't get any rain in Wayne County, so disease-wise, we're still looking okay. A little bit of powdery mildew in cucurbits, but really nothing too bad. Some of the onion crops that are coming off, a little bit of like soft rot, but I mean, nothing unexpected disease-wise. Getting into pests, Chris, to your point, we did start seeing the squash bugs this week, really for the first time, kind of heavy. Cucumber beetles are still fairly active. Honestly, the thrips in many of the crops are still really pretty heavy, and between the thrips and the aphids, we're seeing some viral issues, especially in tomatoes. So that's been kind of challenging for growers this year. They're not always having to worry about massive amounts of thrips and aphids. So for the virus issues to show up is kind of frustrating. I will share Tommy's here with me too, as well as the Wayne County IPM scouts. So we're all joining on the call today. And Chris, would you be able to give me screen sharing?
Yeah, I just did.
Okay, so we were up at a crop walk in West Salem, which is a Amish community here, just in the northwestern part of Wayne County. And so, I'm gonna show you where their technology is at currently. So this is a horse drawn cover crop crimper with a unit attached to it kind of here in the center to open a furrow, and then push that plant debris kind of to the side with those the roller crimper attached to it, and then what's connected to it that you would pull behind it is a planter box. So they were using this to direct seed pumpkins into a field of rolled rye. So just kind of interesting. This particular group of Amish is an old order Amish group. So there you can see that roller crimper again. And it's taken a lot of work from some of these guys to get them to even consider to adopt cover cropping practices. And so what the auction manager did for the produce auction up there in West Salem, he actually had a few of these units built and has been working slowly with just a handful of growers up there to kind of start implementing these practices. And the way the Amish community works is they all start talking, and then they all kind of want to join in on the movement. So just some slow growth in some of their practices, but it's been a good transition for them. And seeing what kind of practices are coming up in the Amish community. So where some of the technology is going. I just thought it was an interesting comparison to see where some of these other vegetable groups are just getting into. So I thought this was pretty innovative for a very conservative group of Amish. These old order guys really are very traditional in what they're doing. So just wanted to share that. So yeah, the insects kind of were the highlight of this week. I will share just from the fruit perspective. This was probably the most trap catch I've had for codling moth in several weeks. Still nothing very high, but and Ashley, maybe you'll have a little more to say on codling moth, but just generally across the area, it was the most consistent catch I've had in quite some time. So I'm kind of curious to see where those numbers go. Definitely went through another generation of OFM, so that was pretty clear in our numbers, but not necessarily seeing that clarity in our codling moth catches, which is making it an interesting year for our orchards and managing codling moth.
Okay, thanks, Frank. Does anybody have any questions for Frank?
If it's okay, I'm gonna slide my laptop here over to Tommy if nobody's got any questions, and he's got a little bit of an update from Lorain County.
Okay, I just had a quick one while you're transitioning that to Tommy.
Yeah.
For when they plant the pumpkins into crimped rye, do they put down any pre-emergent as well, or do they get good enough suppression with just the rye mulch?
From what they've done so far, the initial trial was just with the rye, and I think that there was a little bit of concern that the suppression was not as effective as what they had hoped. They weren't too sure if they had seeded the rye thick enough. So this is only like the first or second year that they've been doing this, so there's still some logistical things to figure out. And I think that possibly looking at getting a pre-emerge down will work into that. I know one thing that the Amish are not super, especially that group, they're not super sold on is or just not familiar with is using a lot of herbicides. So I think there's certainly room for education within that community as well on that. And that's a good point, Chris.
Great, thanks, Frank. All right, Thomas, what's going on in Lorraine County?
Yeah, so fruit wise, I have one orchard that I'm checking some traps with Tom DeHaas up there in Erie County. We had some codling moth in the trap, but while we were scouting, we'd been noticing the woolly apple aphids kind of on the trunks and inner branches the last few weeks, and they're kind of starting to work their way out towards the branch tips. So just kind of watching the progression on that. Vegetable wise, I had a couple calls this week. So one lady in particular, she had some tomatoes with some symptoms that looked similar to herbicide damage, but we wanted to rule out any potential diseases or viral issues. So she did take those to the clinic and confirmed that it was not tobacco or tomato mosaic. So with farm fields being treated with post-emerge, a lot of soybean fields are getting post-emerge herbicide treatments right now. I think that's just something to watch out for, is drift damage. And then I guess another kind of just general comment for a lot of our vegetables, at least up in our area, just things seem to be kind of slow still. So I had a guy call in that he said that a lot of his plants just seem, really short. They're not producing fruit quite yet. And he sent me pictures, and the plants look, for the most part, pretty healthy. And so just encouraging him to stay patient, that a lot of our crops are, 2 to 3 weeks behind. So I explained to him that kind of the stuff that Aaron Wilson has been saying on some of the other calls, that we're behind on growing degree days, and with the smoke, the impact that the smoke might have had on slowing crops down and things like that, and just the shortage of moisture we had early on. And then I did notice some sweet corn starting to silk this week up our way, so that was encouraging as well. That's all I've got for spring.
Yeah, no, thanks, Thomas. And I'm wondering if it wouldn't be good to write a little blurb in the report about herbicide drift in vegetables, like how to recognize the symptoms and what you can do about it. So
Sure.
Excellent. All right. Nick, what's going on in Allen County?
I've just had a few calls out to some people's gardens. Probably the biggest thing I've seen is just Japanese beetles moving in heavily. So just encouraged them to set some traps away from their gardens to try to capture those to prevent any damage that those might start to cause. So that's pretty much it.
Great. Anybody have any questions for Nick? Mark, what about Hardin County? What's going on in your neck of the woods?
Well, I've got a couple reports on cucumber beetles being active. These are mostly striped beetles. One grower mentioned that he had bacteria wilt in a plant, so he removed that plant and sprayed for the cucumber beetle. He was having trouble finding them until he started spraying for them. Other grower had told me that he's been noticing spider mites in his tomatoes, in hoop house tomatoes. So I guess that can be expected with the dry, hot weather. So that was mentioned as well. Also had a grower tell me about he had an issue with watermelon, I believe he said, and cantaloupe, where we had high winds, and he believes that there was wind damage at the base from the plants being whipped around from the high wind, but they seem to have healed from that. But that was one thing that was brought up. Also coming up this coming Wednesday, July 19th, we have our crop walk for our fruit and vegetable growers here in Hardin County. And I know that there's some of the people on this call are involved with that. I did put out a news release for that as well as a flyer, so I can post that on the VegNet site here probably today to maybe get some other growers to come over and attend this event. That's it for Hardin County.
All right, thanks, Mark. Yeah, we're looking forward to that crop walk, and that's a good idea to post it on VegNet. So, yep, thanks for being on the call today. Gigi, did you have anything to report, or are you just listening in?
Well, the biggest thing that I've seen so far is aphids down in my neck of the woods. I've had a lot of people bringing in plants or sending me pictures wanting to know what these little black bugs are. So aphids, and then I did have a lady call me about fruit worms on her tomatoes. Other than that, I'm dealing with the boxwood tree moth and whatever else comes up down there. That's all I got.
Yeah, thanks, Gigi. Yeah, it's pest season for sure. And yeah, aphids seems like it's been such a severe problem this year, even on field crops. So okay. Well, I would like to thank the educators for giving their 2 cents. And I think we can move into some updates from the specialists. So Gary, I don't know if you want to go first.
All right, then I'll go first. And the first thing is about our upcoming event, our field night on July 27th. And so it's a combined fruit and vegetable kind of field night. So I can write a blurb about that for the newsletter. And on the research and production side, and we are in the middle of running a study on what's called the long cane raspberry production trial, and it's really neat. And so we bought these raspberry plants that are about 6 foot tall, and we grow them in containers and 7-liter containers, and also in containers and using 100% fertigation, nutrients and nutrients and water and all that. This is our second year of running the system. Last year was all a baptism by fire. They did not grow very much, and this year we finally figured it out, and plants are growing really fast. And then we have several varieties, and 2 varieties were put out earlier than the main variety, and fruits are already ripening. And then the main variety in our trial is tulamine, and then they have put on a tremendous amount of growth, and lots and lots of flower buds and lots of young developing fruits. So we're very excited about the system, and I can write. I took a lot of pictures and also videos too, and so I can write a little bit about that, and then Ashley and I, and also Melanie, and actually the email came to Melanie first, and from Amanda Bennett. I guess there were a few pictures of elderberry plants, and so kind of a mixed bag, and the main thing we thought, and well, initially Ashley mentioned it kind of looked like herbicide damage on elderberry plants. So that'd be kind of interesting to talk about. Well, speaking of herbicide damage, well, the 2,4-D drift on grapevines, and it's very common. Pretty much anywhere I go, I see some 2,4-D damage. Dicamba, it's a whole lot worse, and because dicamba can either kill them or set them back forever. And 2,4-D grapevines will suffer some, but it's not fatal, it's not permanent, but it's still bad. So if we need to, and I can write a blurb about that. And that's well, tomorrow we're going to set out the trial on the biological control of spotted wing Drosophila at one of our blueberry farms. Well, actually not tomorrow. Tomorrow is Saturday. It's right after this Zoom call. Okay.
What is that trial? Do you want to say more about that? What is that trial looking at exactly?
Well, we're gonna use a nematode to try to kill I guess larvae of SWD, spotted wing Drosophila. So we would spray it and as a spray it on the floor, on the soil, right beneath these blueberry bushes, and then the nematode it's will get into these larvae and then they will die. They never get to hatch. So we'll see how that goes, and it would be neat to it's more of a grower kind of a demonstration trial. I also got a whole bunch of netting from Rufus with Michigan State University. So we're gonna cover some of the bushes and also set out a few SWD traps, and so it's more of a demonstration than the research.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, that's exciting, and it sounds like a lot of good material to contribute to this week's report. So thanks, Gary. And I see that Melanie just put something in the chat about a fact sheet, a new fact sheet on herbicide injury in grapes. So that's an excellent resource right there. We can definitely link to that in our report. So does anybody have any questions for Gary? Thanks, Gary. Melanie, did you want to give an update?
Yeah, I apologize for being late, but if I can share my screen, I'll show you what I was doing. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, let me make it bigger here. So these are some Honeycrisp, not surprising, apples that just came in this morning, and there's 3 farms, one in Mansfield, one near Fredericksburg, and one here in Worcester. And then I'm just going out. Diane Miller actually just went out to check our plots here, but this is a very strange thing. I mean, at first sight, it looks like it might be sunburn. I don't know if you can see that there's like this crinkling around the edge here on them, and then there's blushing, which is sunburn. There's some sunburn here, but when you cut them open, this is what they look like inside. And this looks more like soggy breakdown, but soggy breakdown is a post-harvest injury on Honeycrisp that if you don't condition them before you put them into storage, you can get this happening. So it's very strange. It's wet, but there's also some that are corky. So we're not really sure. We've been communicating with Randy Boudreau up at Michigan State to see if he can help us figure out what's going on here. But this is kind of just showing up. Randy thinks and Diane both think the injury probably occurred a month ago, and now we're starting to see this. So you might start to get samples in that look like this. They almost look like a bruise too, like it was hit, but there's been no hail. Yeah, it's very strange, these symptoms. So that's why I was late. I was trying to figure this out. And at the same time, I'm like, oh, I gotta go. So some other things. Gary mentioned about 2,4-D injury on grape. We've had quite a few samples come in as well with that, with those symptoms. But overall, and I sent a message out to all A&R, we're seeing a lot of very odd symptoms, and they could be smoke related, they could be drought related, they could be temperature fluctuation related, but in most cases, the things that we're seeing on apples and pears aren't pathogen related, which is very odd. We did get those elderberry in. You know, there were some symptoms that looked like herbicide, but I also thought that there was asymmetric yellowing, which is typical of verticillium wilt. So I probably will ask Pam to send in a sample for that.
Totally. Thanks, Melanie. That was a great update. Happy to see you on the call. Ashley, I know you got to split pretty soon, so do you want to give a quick update?
Yeah, sure. I don't know if you all can see me. I am headed up to Fremont to count some thrips and peppers right now. So in terms of bugs that we're seeing in the field and reports I've been getting from growers, I guess I'll start from fruit. I'm seeing that still aphids are continuing to be a problem in a number of different tree fruits. So we actually created some kind of cheat sheet insecticide recommendations that I can maybe share with the group or create a blurb on as well. So things like with not rosy, sorry, woolly apple aphids, for example, that was mentioned previously. If that's continuing to be a significant problem, there are some products that are available, like Moveno, maybe not now, but if you're wanting a quick flash in the pan, kind of knocking those populations back, you know, diazinon can work. But again, if that's a concern, reach out to me. I'd be happy to give you some recommendations. We are going to be getting the second generation of coddling moth for sure in the next week or so. We're accumulating the number of heat units. Actually just got a text message from Dave O'Brien yesterday, who is a nutrient rep, indicating that they're seeing increased activity of coddling moth, suggesting that we're going to need to go on with those cover sprays for coddling moth second generation. Probably in the next 7 to 14 days is when we want to be targeting that population. OFM, obviously, we've gotten second generations now for the past 1 to 2 weeks. So those are definitely strongholds in the orchards. Definitely, it's the time to make those applications generally for those moths to control populations both in apples and in peaches. In terms of, I'm trying to think if there's any other bug. Oh, a Japanese beetle. I've been getting some calls about Japanese beetle. The reminder there is they look bad. I'm not going to lie to anybody. They look bad. They don't look good, right? You're seeing a lot of defoliation, but it takes a whole lot of Japanese beetles in order for there to be a problem. There are some exceptions. For example, Diane Miller brought up a really great example of if you've got a young orchard and you're seeing a bunch of defoliation, that's a problem because those are young plants. But if we're dealing with, you know, some nice mature plants, typically we don't need to worry about Japanese beetle and perennial cropping systems. Okay, I think that's it for vegetables. I've been scouting my pumpkins. I've gotten a pretty significant uptick of squash beetle or squash bug, especially in Fremont area, a little bit in Worcester, not so much in Willard. I kid you not, I have probably 4 egg masses on average across my fields right now in Fremont and in Worcester. So really high densities right out the gate. So we're going to be bopping them with some Assail. It's also the right time prior to bloom to put in those pyrethroids that you won't be able to spray during bloom. So Bifenture, Warrior, those are also not bad ideas. If you're looking for a softer chemistry, there are things like Avant that can actually go after squash bug as well. So hopefully I'll be able to summarize those thoughts as well into a blurb. Striped cucumber beetles continue to have a steady flow in the field. So same thing, you know, if we get that threshold of 1 beetle per plant, that's when we want to make an application. This would also be a great time to use those pyrethroids because we won't have those once we get bloom, at least in pumpkin, for example. And in a lot of different squash plantings, we're already seeing bloom and lots of fruiting happening. Peppers, we are seeing aphids. We had to control for aphids in our pepper plantings because they were so significant. We saw a little bit of white flies. We're seeing thrips. Obviously, we haven't really gotten to a place where we're seeing a lot of fruiting, so we're not seeing ECB move in, for example, requiring management. trying to think. There's probably a bunch of other stuff that I'm forgetting. So if anybody has any, that's what I'll probably end on, is if anybody has any questions, comments, I'd be happy to kind of offer whatever insight I might have. But I'll shut up for now.
Ashley, if you send me that little cheat sheet, I can put it in the next issue of OFN.
Sure.
Anybody have any questions for Ashley?
Just a quick comment to Ashley. I don't know whether you remember there was a little insect on our chokeberry aronia a couple years ago. I think they were they? Were they lace bugs or?
Oh,
yeah,
yeah. Yep, tinges. Yep.
Yeah, so we did make it. Well, Ryan made an application, insecticide application this year. Oh my God, it made a huge difference. Leaves used to be this small, now they're this big and nice and green and glossy and just looking. Yeah, one application, yeah, knocked them back. And there might be another generation now, but overall, I would say 95% of the leaves are looking good.
That is awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
The
I need
magic
to,
of insecticide.
well, I need to. Every time I walk by them, I thought, well, I need to take some, good pictures, and so I'll do that hopefully on this coming Monday. So, yeah, it's really neat, and anyway, thank you.
Of course.
Terrific information, Ashley. Thanks for sharing all that.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that leaves you, Matt. What do you have for us?
I have an observation, an idea, and an update, and I'm going to share my screen. And I'm gonna not use the big view, so we'll just go through these pictures really quickly. So yesterday I took this picture of a potato variety trial that is underway in Worcester. This particular trial, various versions of it have been going on in Ohio at OARDC at OSU Worcester for longer than OSU has been running corn performance trials, by the way, just as a bit of trivia. So the selections that you're seeing, just a small number of, contribute to an overall project that results in breeding varieties of potato to be used in the eastern United States, including Ohio, of course. So we have a lot of genetic diversity in this field, and one aspect of that diversity that you're seeing here is just the overall plant vigor and the size of the canopy. And so in the foreground, you see 3 lines that are relatively small, but they differ, but one of them in particular in the middle is fairly small. And in the background, what you see are 3 rows that contain lines that are so large that the rows have already closed. And that's just one basic observation. But what I also observed is in the second slide, and was reminded of, is that sometimes our crops are a meaningful part of our weed control. So on the left side, you see the furrow just taken from about shoulder height. Picture of the furrow taken between the 2 rows of small lines, if you will, lines with small canopies, and you see obviously that our pre-emergent herbicide activity is broken down. New flush of weeds is coming. There are many weeds there, and they're larger compared to the weeds and the ones that you see at the right. I apologize for my feet. All I did is I walked into the furrow between the 2 rows of very large canopy varieties, and then kind of pushed them apart with my legs, and then took the picture there. And you see far fewer weeds, and they're much smaller. So this is just a reminder that mid to late season weed control is partly driven by the canopy of the crop itself, and how well does the crop compete, or the weeds actually compete for the canopy. And this is just an example from potato, but we obviously have it with all of our cucurbits and many other crops as well. So it's just an observation again that we have a lot of genetic diversity. Growers rarely see in their own fields, so many different varieties at the same time laid out. And what this can remind us of is that those crops themselves can actually be part of the weed control. The update that I'd like to share is around a project that is based on controlling the sidewall positions on high tunnels. Now you might be saying, hey, it's the middle of July, everyone's tunnels are wide open. You know, what's important about this? Well, of course, this is the middle of July, but in not too many weeks from now, we'll be entering a phase of the season when the conditions are much more dynamic, and we will want to control the sidewall positions much more dynamically, if you will. And for most of us, that means running back and forth between wherever we are to the tunnel to use the hand cranks to do that. Well, the update is that we have a system that gives people control of the sidewalls from their smartphone from anywhere in the world, as long as they have internet connection. So in the foreground, you see, and it's powered by solar panel. So you see here in the foreground, solar panel. Back here, there's a battery. There's a motor here, and a motor in the background. And the control system is actually inside the tunnel. It looks kind of gizmo-like and techie and geeky and everything else, but it's actually not quite. It's not all that complicated. There's a modem, some things to control the voltage, the motor driver, and a microcontroller, and then a battery. So through all of that, one is able to control the positions of their sidewalls from their smartphone. And we're trialing this with growers, and all the reports to this point are very, very, very positive. The first mention of this system was actually way back in December of 2021. In a VegNet article that people can scan, or they can get a hold of me if they'd like more information. We'll be talking about this system in various ways, extension-wise, coming up in various programs. So stay tuned for that. I'll stop my share and turn it back over to you, Chris.
All right, thanks, Matt. Yeah, that was very interesting, especially what you said about canopy closure as a form of weed control. I think about crop weed dynamics is sort of a race at first during the critical weed free period, when it's most important to get rid of or to keep the weeds under control. And when the plants get big enough and the canopy closes, they can kind of coast for the rest of the season. So very good observation. Does anybody have any questions for Matt? All right, well, thanks everybody for being here today and giving your updates. I think that this will be very valuable for growers in the form of the report, as well as just this conversation here.